Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to this new edition of the Daily Analysis. Let's start with a recap of yesterday, which basically went well as expected in a lateral movement with really low volumes, a bit on all the indices, on all the stock futures. In short, it continues to predominate. The lack of volumes continues to predominate substantially, in my opinion. After the close, in short, a bit of news has arrived on the market regarding US-China agreements on tariffs. This triggered a movement overnight, but I want to emphasize again that it happened with virtually no volume. This meant that this morning, with the close of the Asian session, the price completely retraced from this spike, from this overnight spike. We'll see how things develop over the course of the day. Today, there aren't any significant macroeconomic data releases, so the day should go by fairly quietly, except at 10:00 when we have Trump's press conference. So we'll probably hear what he has to say, what he has to add about this whole situation, and there will be an increase in volatility. At least that's the expectation. Then we'll see if these expectations will turn into reality, and if the market will react in the same way. We still don't know what the topics will be, or the extent of the statements that will actually reach the market. Basically, we'll see. Perfect. With this brief recap done, I'd like to remind you that this is a week with contract expirations. I'll post them in the chat later, but I'll quickly tell you here, we have expirations on Friday when ES, Dow Jones, and Russell become the front contracts, while the Nasdaq becomes the front contract on Monday. The Standard Poor's rolls with plus 54 points, the Russell with plus 17, the Nasdaq should be plus 230, and I haven't checked the Dow Jones yet, but it should be around 200 points as well. Meanwhile, the DAX will roll on Thursday, this Thursday the 19th, so Thursday the 19th it will roll, which is next week, and it will roll with an additional 131 points. Meanwhile, the Stoxx, the Euro Stoxx, even though we don't really follow, it will roll with 21 points more. So pay attention to all these things. Maybe later I'll make a post in the chat, just as a reminder of what I've said. Perfect. Let's move on and take a look at the charts from an operational point of view. As usual, let's start with the Nasdaq and see what happened. We were talking about this, let's say, overnight spike upwards, basically breaking through the Heiser falls breakout, only to then, with the opening, or rather the closing of the Asian markets, drop back exactly to where we started from, or even lower than where we had begun, essentially. So basically nothing has happened. We are still in a sideways range. For now, let's keep an eye on this BC3 level. If we want, we can disregard this minor breakout, but I believe this is the real level to break. So around 21,940 or so to the upside. Meanwhile, on the downside, let's monitor this area here around 21,740, 21,720, because breaking this level could easily bring prices back to test this area of lows, which also corresponds to today's minimum area with the lower value area. Perfect. Let's move on to the SP, which is obviously in a more or less similar situation. Well, basically it too broke through the 6,000, and the highs recorded yesterday in an area around 6,025. So a breakout to the upside, only to then fall back inside. Now we're already trading below that level. We are still basically within this range. Here as well, we are going to monitor this BC3 level to the upside, which is around 6,035. To the downside, we are watching this area around 5,990, 6,000, the break below. Could bring prices back to 5,950, 5,940, and possibly dips to 5,930 to test these two lows. Okay, let's take a look at the Dow Jones. Of course, we'll move on to the other American futures that we follow. Here it is. This is the Dow Jones. The Dow Jones last night did not well. it didn't participate in breaking through the previous highs. It basically stayed right here. So let's keep an eye on 40 around the 43,000 area for either to the upside or downside, and let's monitor 42.6, 42.5 roughly, which is, well, it's this whole area here. If we zoom out the chart, we can clearly identify this range that's developing, so we can operate to the downside. But obviously there are many levels within this range that we can use to work in the short term, in the very short term. Let's say these are the two main support levels to watch for the day, because in my opinion, breaking through these areas will trigger movements either to the upside or the downside. Let's also take a look at the Russell. Of course, here it comes. And well, it also spiked overnight, broke through the previous highs and tried to find support to recover, but it didn't manage to do so. At the moment, let's keep monitoring the levels we previously identified as resistance, specifically the 2135 and 2140 areas, which will now act as support. On the upside, we're watching 250 and 260, which are definitely important pivot points. Maybe if I look at a broader time frame, say the hourly chart, we can get a better sense of where we are. Just a moment, it's coming up. Here it is. This is the chart. As you can see, we've broken through this previous high here. So right now the 135 area will act as support for any upward movement. We are below these lows here, so the next target could be the 185 area, and then 200. We'll see. Let's also look at the DAX, which really continues with extremely low volumes. And well, at the moment, the markets have only been open for about 10 minutes this morning. It's already going to test the lows recorded yesterday in the 24,115 area. Basically, a break of this area could easily bring prices down to 23,950, 23,880, essentially to test the area of today's VIX1 lows, which more or less correspond to the support area for this whole range, a pivot point that we can identify right around 23,980, 23,950. So this is the target area. If it breaks through 24,100, which basically corresponds to this high here. On the upside, of course, we need to monitor the highs reached last night at 24,270, whose breakout could lead prices to retest this area of highs here at 24,350, 24,360. Okay, we still need to take a look at the commodities, of course. Let's start with oil. Here it comes. Oil, which last night, following these agreements and as with the strong recovery in the economy and trading, so oil production will definitely increase due to higher demand, experience this further upward push, even though, as you can see, the movements are a bit jagged with a sawtooth pattern. They have been well tested, but then the movement continued once it broke out of this range with a test right in the area of the previous months. Then there was the breakout to the upside, the retest of the highs, which corresponded to this beautiful BC3 level, from which the rally started from 64.80. At the moment it reached a high of 64.65 last night, but it is still holding steadily above 65 right now. So let's monitor on the downside these highs here. 65.25, 65.10, and finally, of course, this area here at 64.80. On the upside, let's keep an eye on 65.60, because in my opinion, a break above 65.60 could push prices up to the 67 area as well. Perfect. Let's take a look at gold. Here it is. Gold, which went yesterday, or rather last night, to retest the low recorded on Monday in the 3,315 area. Well, it stopped just before that and recovered, broke through this previous high, and now it needs to go test this one and break through it, which is around 3,360, in order to aim for a recovery of this area here, 3,380, 3,390. If it manages to surpass, if it manages to recover this, obviously I expect a test of the central part of this range, which we can identify between these two highs and these two low areas. So if it fails to break upward here, prices could go back to retest the lower part of this range. So let's keep an eye on these levels. Okay, we still have to take a look at. Let's take a quick look at the SPX, which basically also stayed sideways yesterday. Couldn't participate in this overnight breakout, obviously, because it was closed. We'll see where it opens. And the situation remains stuck. There's indecision, volumes are low, volatility keeps dropping, and the markets are adjusting to the news that comes in. The reactions are less and less violent precisely because by now the market expects them, so they no longer have the disruptive effect they used to. So we'll need to find new triggers that can move the market. The triggers, in my opinion, at this point are obviously the agreements on these tariffs, which they keep talking about, showing us, making announcements, but then they don't actually reveal them. So we don't know the details of these tariffs, and it's impossible to properly assess what the impact could be on the entire global economy. We still have to look at Bitcoin. Here it comes, it's recovered. Let me show you this pivot point we had highlighted. I'll put it back on the 10-minute chart to show you. Look at how well it acted as a repeller, and then from there the long break started. At the moment, prices are hovering just below today's HV levels, resting on SD and SDON. But basically the movement has been quite broad. We're back in the 110 area, working just below it, around 109.4. So for now, we're monitoring this area here at 108.75. It mustn't break downward, because holding this area could easily push prices even higher up to the 113 area, which is today's one-day max area. On the downside, as we said, let's keep an eye on 108.5 and 108.6, this BC3 level area, because if this breaks, prices could go back to test this area here and also the pivot we pointed out. With this beautiful node we already identified last week. Perfect. With that, we've reached the end of this daily analysis. As always, I invite you to leave a like on the video, follow me on social media, and we'll catch up later in the chat. Thanks everyone for your attention.